So did you think that The Marvels was just a little film with a little loss that was going to have little impact on the MCU? Were you listening to the Access media again telling you that it was just trolls and toxicity that was tanking the box office? Well, think again, folks. We're here to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve, and that's what we're going to do today as we relay to you that in fact not only has Captain America Brave New World been delayed to 2025 likely for ideological reasons that were put in the script, but now they may also be utterly abandoning the next Avengers movie and changing it entirely. Jonathan Majors and the Kang Dynasty seems out, and there's more fallout from the Marvels. So there is mass chaos when it comes to Disney, when it comes to Marvel, and when it comes to all of the proponents of what Disney has done. They cannot figure how to get everyone on board with what has happened, and it is absolutely a shipwreck. How do you get passengers back on a ship that is going under? Nobody wants to be a part of this. Today we're joined by Culture Casino as we talk about how Marvel apparently is dropping the Kang Dynasty now. We're seeing movies altered in real time, and we've got some information also about Captain America Brave New World and what's happening there. Culture, what we're looking at right now is thatparkplace.com. We are about to have a major reveal for the website on Monday. We'll have a special live stream at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as a press release. Folks, you don't want to miss it. But we can see here that at the top we've got box office analysts predict the Marvels will lose hundreds of millions after posting worst opening weekend in MCU history. We've got Disney World introduces pronoun preference cast member name tags. Deadpool 3, more multiversal mayhem means Marvel might have trouble. And look at that, Culture. You're the author on that article. How about that?
Wow. I wonder how that happened.
Well, we pick out great authors, and then sometimes we're gifted with great authors. And that the latter is how we came about you. But I want to go to this article by Johan Sobieski, and it is writer Jeff Loveness removed from Avengers, the Kang Dynasty film, because Marvel is moving in another direction. This is a rumor, of course, folks, but since this article has been written, I think there's been even more substantiation to this rumor. Let's get into it now, Culture, and then I want your take on the greater ramifications as we are watching the MCU in freefall, I believe. A new rumor claims that writer Jeff Loveness was removed from Avengers the Kang Dynasty because Marvel Studios will be taking the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a different direction from Kang the Conqueror. And it seems like they're taking the MCU in many different directions now. I also want to say here too, folks, if you think that the Marvels was just barely, performing lower than some of the bottom films ever, take a look at how they're reacting. They're not reacting as if this is just a misstep. They're reacting as if this is seismic, because they're making seismic changes. Back in May, following the box office flop of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, a film written by Loveness, it was reported that Loveness was no longer working on Avengers Kang Dynasty. Scooper Jeff Snyder reported, rumor, hearing that screenwriter Jeff Loveness is off Avengers Kang Dynasty, that he fell off prior to the strike. Now, that's important, Culture. Remember that prior to the strike. That's been a long time going. Now, a new rumor claims that Loveness is off the film and no longer working for Marvel because Marvel was moving in a different direction with Kang the Conqueror. Joanna Robinson on the House of R podcast detailed, we saw the Quantumania post-credits where Kang is everywhere, but I actually heard from someone recently I was talking about, so the screenwriter Jeff Loveness, who wrote Quantumania, was supposed to write Kang Dynasty. And then it sort of came out that he was no longer attached to the film. Anyway, I had it confirmed to me he's no longer working for Marvel. Now, why does this person matter, Culture? Joanna Robinson, turns out that she had that all-access book where she basically had the ability to talk to anybody and everybody over at Marvel. And in return, she wrote a glowing essay in long format, many pages, hundreds of pages of glowing, what would you say here? Accolades.
I'm not so fancy. I would say it's a puff piece in the form.
Well, it's many puff pieces. It's an entire book of puffery. A book of puffery, folks. Culture, that she knows this, though, is significant because, as we said, she's been given all access. Tell us why you think the Kang Dynasty is being taken out of Marvel. It almost certainly seems now.
Well, I think they've realized they stumbled upon the wrong path in phases 4 and 5 because as, you know, as we've seen, all of the earnings for those films have gone steadily downward, film after film, for the most part. Absent what James Gunn left us with, there really hasn't been something super successful from Marvel. So I think that's reason number one. Reason number two is because they weren't able to get out from underneath Jonathan Majors' legal trouble, and you can't untie Jonathan Majors from the character of Kang. They also are hearing lots of feedback from customers, of viewers, clients of Disney Plus, whatever you would like to call them, viewers, that we're not so interested in the multiverse anymore. I think that we're starting to hear that. I think people want to unravel that and get back to ground level. But ultimately, it comes down to they've just recognized they're headed in the wrong way. I think that's all there is to it. I can't argue with them. I think that if you've got people like Snyder talking about it, and obviously this lady that wrote the book, the MCU, um, eh, it's quite clear they have to pursue an entirely different path, which speaks volumes to everything else we've been reporting about the change in films, the complete rewrite or reshoot of pretty much everything, including the new Captain America film, and obviously Daredevil, which is also headed in the wrong way. I think that they've been uh, well, they whether they want to or not, they've been forced to change direction.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Let's go back to the article now and continue reading. She added, and I asked the person why, and they said the reason was that his stuff, he was all wrapped up in this Kang storyline, and that they are likely going to be moving away from that. That's talking about the writer. Why the writer was removed is because, well, there was
Yeah.
no more writing needed. The movie's not coming out. Robinson then hedged. No official announcement that Avengers Kang Dynasty will now officially be called Doom's Dystopia or whatever. We don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I think that this just gives them the perfect opportunity to be done if they want to be. Now they've got a bit of an out with the way they ended Loki, but it's also culture. This is what gets interesting, and this is where I think we go a place that folks you just won't hear this anywhere else. But that's why you're here. We explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. Culture. This is an Avengers film. If they're going to ditch Kang, and if we're hearing simultaneous, they have a very high level of interest in bringing back the OG Avengers to try to save the franchise. And folks, we're here to tell you, I think they're really trying to save Marvel. You know, if Deadpool 3 doesn't do well, they're in really bad trouble right now. They are headed for DC territory, and they may already be there. So, what I'm looking at here, cultures, we've got two things happening. We've got a major rumor that the original Avengers are being reached out to. And here on this channel, we've said that our sources believe that Robert Downey Jr. has agreed and that there may
Oh,
be a contract in place. We've also
yeah.
heard that Jeremy Renner may also have a contract in place. Now, that's the only two that we've heard that about. Can't corroborate it right now, but that's what we've heard. But you've got that rumor going on, and then you've got an Avengers film being completely redone. I think this may be them making way to try to save the franchise by bringing back the OG Avengers in some kind of multiverse saga now, and get away from Jonathan Majors. We're not here to prejudge anything about Jonathan Majors, but Marvel seems to want to get away from him. Your thoughts on this being the opportunity for Marvel to bring back RDJ, and also culture? If I can make this even more complicated for you to answer, folks out there have said that they loved RDJ, but they don't want him back because they're afraid of what Marvel will do with him. They're afraid it will dilute his original story. So tell me if you think it's a good idea if that's what they're doing.
Well, I would say that the instincts of the public you know, at large are they're accurate. I don't think that you want to bring him back. I think it's not just a sign of desperation, but they really are trying to save Marvel. That's unquestioned at this point. I see what's happening with the storyline for Deadpool 3. And I believe that they are going to utilize for hopefully the last time this multiverse gook and do exactly what I put in the article today, which is grab as many of the old Avengers from their timelines and worlds and pull them into the one where Deadpool is to kind of put the team back together. And I think
Now,
that's probably
culture,
yeah,
explain this to me. I
yeah,
don't mean to interrupt you, but your
sure.
article was amazing, and we'll have the link to your article for folks to go read. if they want some more in-depth analysis of this. But is it my understanding that you are buying into this idea that maybe they could turn these original characters into representations of the Infinity Stones? Was that something that you touched on?
I didn't do any of that writing there because I couldn't corroborate any of that, but you probably have heard
But you've been
something
paying
like that.
attention to it.
Yeah, I truly expect though that we'll see we'll see these heroes come back in droves to do exactly what you said, try to save Marvel. I do believe that Deadpool 3 could be and unfortunately be the last large scale Marvel film if they are not able to pull this off. Despite the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, they're still going to be working on whatever version of Captain America 4 they've finally landed on.
And folks, we'll
And
have a video out this afternoon about why that is being delayed. We've had some more reporting on it. You won't believe what they were going to do and what they are now scared to do with Captain America Brave New World. Incredible.
yeah, they had to do massive amounts. It's completely being reshot. I mean, you're looking at an entire a film once more
Well,
being filmed, and
when
this
your
is not
bad
a
guy, when your bad guy was a political representation of the modern world that you are now terrified to actually bring out, then I think, yeah, I can see why the reshoots are going to happen now.
yeah, and they've worked really hard at that. But back to the question at hand. So yeah, they're really that desperate to bring back everybody, and I don't think it's a secret anymore. I think again, when you have people like Schneider and others talking about it, you're
They can't have
starting.
Marvel turn into Star Wars. I mean, Disney
No,
literally can't afford it. And I'm reminded, Culture, of this glowing earnings report. And now
oh
where we
yeah,
are, right? Within just a few days, now we're at this point where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, your two biggest franchises are at the point of arrest, right? They're at the
well,
point of ceasing to be what they were.
well, I would say that you both of them if they're not already on life support are darn close to being there. I mean, obviously, I think Star Wars is at that point. I think you're definitely in the ICU if you're Marvel. And like I said, the only way through it is to try to reclaim the audience that you abandoned, as we've all mentioned, for a fictional audience that doesn't exist and a dwindling one at that.
Well, watch this,
They
Culture. Take this on for a moment.
yeah.
If you okay, so we've just seen how badly the Marvels performed, right?
Mhm.
Right. Almost all of us agree that Ahsoka is in orders of magnitude worse than the Marvels.
Yeah.
They want to do a movie based on Thrawn and based on Ahsoka and Dave Filoni at the helm. Let's imagine for a moment that that might come in at half the box office of the Marvels, and you realize, oh, I mean, they are screwed every way they can be, every possible way you could be screwed right now with these two franchises.
Yeah, they don't the one of the biggest problems they've had is they've tried to plot these long timelines of events that will happen sequence to sequence to tie them all together instead of thinking deeply about each of these things individually. And I think that's been something that's kind of hamstrung them for quite some time. First of all, clearly Feige isn't capable of doing that on the Marvel side of the equation. He was put in a better position by Gunn, who actually outlined the timeline that we ended up with. They brought us into Endgame. If I don't believe if Gunn hadn't done that, I don't believe that Marvel would be where it was, and that Endgame would have been the deal that it was. But I think Feige's incapable of that, and we've given him far too much credit for
I
far
think we're
too long.
finding out that he's incompetent. I hate to say it,
Yeah,
but Culture, how do you
yeah.
go if we are to believe that Kevin Feige was like the legend of all cinema, right? Let's make it
Mhm.
analogous to being an NBA All-Star. How do we go from being someone who can perform at the highest heights, spectacular dunks, three-pointers, Euro steps, etc., to someone who can't make a granny shot from the free throw line? I mean, what we're witnessing right now is ultimate incompetence. I mean, you could go find an average person on the street and outperform what's happening right now. This is very, very bad.
Well, I would volunteer to be that person on the street to
You'll
start
fix it,
fixing it.
eh?
I just all I know is that as he's lost talent throughout his organization or forced talent out or stopped hiring actual talent, which I would say is another part of the problem there at Marvel. They don't bring in quality directors with their own ideas and ways of doing things. Instead, he's basically, as we've learned through the last few years, through other creators that we're familiar with, that they basically cast these people into these positions to be the first of this and the first of that, rather than actually hiring them for their merit and for a fit in a universe or a multiverse in this case, so that everything kind of fits together neatly. And if Feige's the only one that's trying to fit things together neatly, and he's doing that by again bringing in people who don't have the merit for the job, well, we've seen the results of that.
So, Coach, let me toss this at you. This is what I find fascinating on a deep level: is that Disney had multiple lines, multiple intellectual properties, multiple franchises that were all operating at the top tier of the Pareto principle. Now,
Yeah.
the Pareto principle, of course, is that 80% of success generally comes from about 20% of the participants in any given endeavor. And this goes right down into biology. This goes throughout economics. It maps out very well across a tremendous number of domains. The
Mhm.
interesting thing about the Pareto principle is that once you take, let's say, that 20% of successful generators, then even within that, you can reapply the principle again. And you can say, well, within this 20% of this 20% will create 80% of this group's. And then it keeps going and going, and you create this exponential curve of success. And to go back to the NBA reference, you can all think about, uh, when you need to recall a famous basketball player, Michael Jordan sits atop all of the Pareto principles, right? And then
Yeah.
you've got some that are just below him. But the vast majority of NBA players, none of you can recall because they did not excel in the NBA. But if they, whatever high school they came from, I'll guarantee you their names are on the gymnasiums because in that domain they were at the top of that principle. Now
Yes.
Disney, they had Pixar, they had Star Wars, they had Marvel, and basically due to prior successes, that those had been placed at the top of these Pareto curves. And what that meant was culture that you could put something out with the name Disney on it, whether it was Marvel or Lucasfilm or Pixar or Disney Animation. You could put that out there and it was going to succeed at the highest level, just de facto beyond what other studios had.
Mhm.
And when you have that kind of economic baseline success, you should never do anything whatsoever that could destroy it. And Disney has done it now with three separate brands that I can tell, three separate brands: Pixar, Lucasfilm, and Marvel. People no longer trust it, and they've killed that Pareto principle that was lifting those things just by the fact that they had the name on it.
I think you've landed on it. I mean, Disney essentially had been distilling their talent into the highest concentrations, and they did a great job. And then they got rid of the people that actually were part of that distilled group of greatness. And I think that we're seeing just how hobbled they are now
You've nailed
because
it,
of it.
culture. Because
Yeah.
because what is it? Who is it? Is the better question. Not what is it. When they got rid of John Lasseter from Pixar, they got rid
Mhm.
of Pixar. The name
Yeah.
Pixar remains, but Pixar was gone. When they got rid of the tenants of George Lucas, they still had Lucasfilm, but that's a name only. That's what's
Yeah.
happened here is they've wiped out the creative geniuses who put them in the place that they could be.
Yeah. We've been suffering from in name only for a very long time. And I would even add one more to the list, Pro. I think you stumbled onto it. Hey,
What do you got?
you lost Marvel, you've lost Star Wars, you've lost Pixar, but you've also lost Walt Disney Animation.
That's a
Um,
great point. They
yeah,
can't draw
and
anymore.
well, it doesn't look great. And even when Laster was trying to run both things with his partner, and I always forget his name, but when he was no longer with us, um, you ended up with just a hollowed out shell at both animation divisions, Pixar and Walt Disney Animation, both. And
Absolutely.
I feel as if you've really hit the nail on the head. Is that they've really shaken out so much of the high end talent and the people that should have been kept around for institutional knowledge and for mentorship, that they forced them out. You took away the fiscal controls and the instincts of one Ike Perlmutter from Marvel. I mean, we could go through a list of these things.
How about this,
You
culture? How about
yeah.
this? They ran off the people who were moderates and conservatives for
Mm,
ideological reasons, and
mm.
then that gave way to their inability to produce content at the level that they once desired or should desire. And how about this, culture? that should be a warning to everyone out there with any sense of rationality in their head that if this is what happens to the biggest cultural disseminator corporation on the planet for family entertainment, if this is what happens to the big one, the big Disney, then don't do it with your small business. Don't do it with your local government. Don't do it with anything, because this is what happens when you run these puritanical systems where you have to have ideological purity and you're no longer focused on success. How about that? That's a broader statement, isn't it?
It's very broad and it's very accurate. And then I agree with you wholeheartedly, but returning this to the Kang dynasty, I really do believe that if they don't do what they should have done with the Marvels and just cancel the project entirely and look for another direction, which is what they should have done with the Marvels, as many have suggested, this should have been Batgirled. Um, they're being foolhardy. They are essentially probably doubling or tripling down for the last time.
All right, let me ask you this as we read the
Yeah,
last little section of the article here.
yeah.
It says the idea that Marvel might scrap their King plans is not out of the realm of possibility. Goes on
Mm,
to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania having not done well with Kang the Conqueror at the lead there. Talks about the film's $200 million that it had for a budget, needed $500 million at minimum to break even, given the marketing. Kang clearly did not drive interest. And we saw the same thing with ratings for Loki season 2. As much as I liked the finale for Loki season 2, and I did, it didn't generate enough interest to satisfy, I think, going forward with Jonathan Majors. Culture, here's my question for you. Maybe we're being too harsh here. Maybe Marvel has learned. Maybe they will change. Do you think that this is a sign that they are getting the message and that they're going to get away from storylines and from narrative choices that are doomed to fail?
um,
Is
Perhaps,
there
but
hope, culture?
I look, I would love to jump on the, they're returning to the fold kind of a thought process, but I can't.
Right,
I don't
we
have.
got to see it first.
Yeah, exactly. We are now at the, show me state
Hmm.
of
Yep.
things, and I don't believe they're even capable of doing that, bro. In fact, I've been on the record saying, and I'll say it here, Marvel's dead. Marvel's a shambling shell. It's a zombie. It's an animated corpse at best.
Phase
And
5 is starting to look a lot like Scott's Tots. You remember that episode of The Office? We've been
oh
promised a lot, and we're getting very little, and it's getting super awkward now, Mr. Feige. Getting
yeah.
super awkward.
Yeah, it's very strange, and like I said, they have to get out from underneath Kang. This was a failed direction that they have to, punch out of. I think you're right, and I think that Deadpool 3 will be the pivot point. And
Deadpool 3,
if
if it fails, they're in major
it
trouble. I want to
it's
say
over.
this, culture. Here's why I
Yeah.
think it might fail. I'm not rooting for it to fail. I'm rooting for it to win. But
Yeah.
I am worried because out of the writer's strike, there's been new, what would you say here? New controls put in place to prevent actors from ad-libbing. And, I'm worried that Ryan Reynolds is not going to have the full creative control that he needs to make that movie great. It worries me, but I'm hopeful that they'll pull it off, because if they don't, Marvel's down.
Yeah. And again, I think you don't put creative restrictions on Ryan Reynolds. I think you give him ever any kind of credit in a film production so that he isn't hampered by a script or any other things, and he can ad lib. In fact, I think that's going to be the sidestep around that most of the time. But at the same time, um, I feel I feel like if they don't let him rely on his instincts and deliver what he can with that character and be the merc with a mouth, and I know that usually puts you in an R category. I don't think there's a pathway back for Marvel. I look, I said this about, the Marvels film before it came out. This will be an unmitigated disaster, and it was, and it's
Well,
only going to get worse. And
think
you
think
know
about it
what?
this way, culture,
Yeah,
because there's going to be people out there who say, "Oh, come on, you guys are ridiculous, you're going too far." Okay,
sure.
if Deadpool 3 doesn't win, then we got to wait all the way until 2025 to get a film that is now being reshot with what is Harrison Ford 81, 82 at this point. Now it's going to be completely reshot again. So good luck with that being good. And then we've got Thunderbolts after that nobody knows what the heck that is because nobody cares about Thunderbolts. So that's what they have following up. That's their cleanup hitters after Deadpool 3. So yeah, Deadpool 3 has to win because they've got two stinkers behind it.
Well, and they have Harrison Ford stepping into that role, right?
Yes,
for Thunderbolts.
Wish him well.
Yeah, because I'm telling you what, William Hurt was a fun character, and for those of you that don't remember, I think it was 2008 Hulk, if I'm right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
which is now more pertinent today than ever before because
it was
the worst, and now it's been easily beaten for the bottom by the Marvels.
Yeah, and again, the behind the scenes struggle there, which I think I'm doing a segment for that Park Place on. The behind the scenes struggle there was really why that film didn't do very well. It was a change in tone from the successful film that preceded it, which was the original Iron Man. So tonally that was why that was off. It's why it was off at the box office. It's probably why it didn't deliver. Ed Norton you can set aside from that, but one
person who always delivers though, Culture, is you, of course.
Well, thank you.
Culture, tell us where we can find you on this great big beautiful web out there.
Oh, sure. You can find me here at Culture Casino. I made it very simple. You can find me there at all the places I am, which include Rumble, Odyssey, Minds, Getter, Twitter, I guess that's X now, and YouTube, of course. You can also find me on That Park Place 4 to 5 times a week. You probably could find me there today hanging out with Jonas for his stream. If you missed it, go back and watch the replay.
That's right. Unless people out there, think that Pro was being rude, cutting you off there and outroing you, folks, I'm keeping my eyes on the clock here, and I know that Culture needs to be moving on along to his next appointment, which is with That Park Place and getting ready for their live stream. This, of course, is recorded a little bit before when that comes out. But folks, make sure you check out Culture on that live stream as well, and continue to follow us here for more content regarding Marvel. It's honestly moving so fast now, it's hard to keep up with it between what's happening with Marvel, Disney, and also the mainstream media. The mainstream media, there's an article out of Forbes that we're going to cover in the next day or so that is the height of just being utterly wrong. I mean, it's just utterly, totally, factually inaccurate to the point that it's laughable. But we will cover it all, folks. That is what you have us do, and that is what we will do. So, if you'd help us out, click that like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. And if you do so, we'll keep at it as well. So, folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
This is Wilton the Troll reporting for That's Park Place, and I'm surrounded by loving and adoring people who are peacefully trying to make sure that poor kids aren't cold in the winter. And just behind me, you can see a totally natural bonfire for making cookies or making marshmallows.
Yeah, so, Wilson, we really appreciate the effort and stuff, but we're looking for real and, accurate news reporting on That Park Place.
So not like most news outlets, huh?
No.